Hi, this is Anna Imagination, and this is part of my esoteric science course. So this is one, this is one I've been waiting for. All right. I wrote a series of, I have to do text stuff. Give me a minute. Oh no. Oh no. All right, I'm going to do new whiteboard. Welcome. Okay. All right, it's working. Okay, good. All right, so this is what I'm going to go ahead and show you. There are two stories here, and this is what was conflicting is the two stories. So I'm going to give you story one. Oh, this is so confusing. So actually, there are three stories, but we're only going to do two stories right now. So the first story, and then we're going to do the second story. And we are going to call the first story the original origin story. And the original origin story is very simple. There are the Earth Mother. Sometimes it's the Earth Father, but usually it's the Earth Mother. And the Earth Mother had the Sky Father, which was sometimes referred to as the Sky Mother. Now, over time, throughout the story, there was Inanna or Iana and Anu. Another example of this is, a name I cannot pronounce because it's Greek and it's a really, really deep Greek name. It's Awa is what it's called, but I'm not going to try an A-I-O. Oh, just give me a minute here. I like to be precise. I don't like to guess at my Greek names. This is Hellenistic Greek that I'm going to. Okay. Kronos. Kronos is associated with Aeon. There it is. Oh, okay, there's the N. I always forget the N. I-O. Okay, A-I-O-N. And there's no way I can pronounce her name. There's no way. I'm not even going to try to pronounce her name. Okay, it's an ash. It's just an ash. Ternitas. Okay, so just ash and then ternitas. Ternitas. Okay. So these are examples of this. So ein means literally life, love, time, all the same thing. And eternitas means eternity. All right. And that's really it. It comes down to these three things, which comes down to eternal love. And in every story, there's three elements. There is earth, sky, and water. Always. Always. So that is the first part of the story. Okay. So I guess you would say that those are our players, the players of our story. Now, the other part of this comes out with the nemesis or the villain. This is the bad guy. This is the conflict. We're going to call this the conflict. Okay. And this is where a lot of people have really, really gotten this confused because there's two stories here. There's actually three, but let's just stick with these two for now. Okay. I really want to be like, no, I want to do the other story. So yeah, let's actually do that. Let's do it. So I'm just going to put up here the other story. And that's going to be the whole We're going to call that the not Earth story. There we go. There we go. That's probably the best thing to do. It's the not Earth story. So there's that. All right. So you've got these two stories, and the two stories only exist here on Earth. The other story is the one that happens pre-Earth. Yeah, we're going to call it pre-Earth. We're going to call it pre-Earth. I like that. The pre-Earth story. Okay. And I don't want to talk about the pre-Earth story because the pre-Earth story, there's no evidence. There's zero evidence because it's pre-Earth. So I'm just going to leave the pre-Earth story alone because there's just no evidence. The origin story is Earth, Mother, Sky, Father. And throughout all of history time, you see that story repeated over and over again with Iana and Anu. And that comes from, oh yeah, and then you have Danu. Here, actually, we're going to do this because that's going to be fun. So then you have Lu and Danu. Sometimes you have Dagda and Danu. That's one way you can look at it. So if you do not know, we're going to update you. This is from Assyria, which is Mesopotamia. Mesopotamia, specifically Ur, which is Assyria. And then you have, well, I'm going to go ahead and remove, they were definitely in Ur. I'm just going to leave it there. They were in Ur or Uruk, same place, had two different names, of Mesopotamia. And then you had Lu and Dagda and Danu. This is from Ireland. And then you had Ion and Aternas, and this is from Hellenistic Greek. Hellenistic Greece. Okay. So there you go. This is your origin story. And that's pretty much it. And then you have earth, sky, and water. And these are the things that now a lot of people are going to jump up and go, what about fire? You really need to take physics. Physics, according to physics, fire is not an element. It is a chemical reaction, which is why in all of the esoteric sciences, there's only 3 elements. The 4th element came in from non-scholars not knowing anything about physics. Fire is not an element. Fire actually is knowledge. Fire is knowledge. That's representative of it. It's metaphor. This is a metaphor. And then you have, it's a chemical reaction. This is an element, as in it's on the periodic table of elements because it's an element. And sky, air, is an element that is on the periodic table of elements. And water, we all know water, that's H2O. That is, on the periodic table of elements because it's an element. Fire is represented by knowledge, which is why we have the Prometheus story, and it's also a chemical reaction. So there you have it. And of course, with fire, we have Asha, which actually means wisdom, which does literally mean ash, which comes from Mesopotamia, which is why we had stories around a campfire, which is like literally the oldest tradition since ever. The campfire stories are literally human, natural human. It's amazing. Okay. So there you have that. We're going to leave that over there. And just for, fun fact, the ash tree is the world tree. So we're going to throw that in here. So you have the ash tree. You see how this keeps going over and over again with ash, which is wisdom, which is the tree of knowledge, which is the tree of life. And that theme just keeps going over and over again. Okay. So then over here you have the conflict. And this is where a lot of people are trying to sort out origin story 1 and the conflict. The conflict consists of this. It's the battle of good and evil. All right, that's it. It's the battle of good and evil. And the battle of good and evil literally is called, it leads to the eschatological. One of these days, I'm going to do a pitter-patter song using the word eschatological. Eschatological, eschatological. It's a great word, eschatological. Eschatological means the logic and science of the afterlife. The logic and science of, actually, I believe it also is the end of days. Da, 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 da. Now, once upon a time, there was a great evil and love. And love, which it could be Awan, or it could be, Danu or Oriana, all of these different people. You have love, which is God, by the way. So one of the biggest misnomers that people say is God is love. No, 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 no. You got it backwards. Love is God. Big, big, big difference, people. Love is God, not the other way around. Love is God. Love is God. So you have a great evil versus love, okay, which means versus God. Okay, that's all this is. So it's God versus God's nemesis. God's nemesis is called not love. Now, this is where throughout all of history, this is a common denominator. One of the common denominators of this is this right here. Not love has no names and is known by many names. And this is very true. It's weird how many, this is a common denominator. Not love has no names and is known by many names. Some of those names is evil, devil. Look at the word, evil and devil. Isn't that amazing? Just like good and God. Isn't that interesting? I don't know if you've ever noticed this. I love words. This is why I love words. So you have evil versus devil, God versus good. Yeah, this is all we're talking about here. All right, so that's just like a little fun fact. Okay, so common denominator. So we have evil, devil, legion, druj, drog, druja, I believe is what they're called. And then we have drog. What else do we have? Oh yeah, we have drug. Or is it? No, it's druj. Druj, that's what it's called, druj. Okay, why did it change it over to? So I wanted druga, say. So yeah, you're getting the idea here. Is it druja? Yeah, druja. It was druja. So you have druja, drog, druj. You have all these different names. Evil, devil, legion, demon, lie, narcissist. What else do we have? Consumption. It's the other word I call it, consumption. You get the idea, okay? So you basically have the story of good and evil. Now, according to the eschatological common denominators of the conflict, basically what you end up having is, by the way, this is dichotomy. This is what a lot of people don't understand, is this is dichotomy. It is not an opposite. It is a dichotomy. Dichotomy. Technically, dichotomy could very well be the problem here. So this presents two completely different sides. And this is where a lot of people are getting this confused. Dichotomy exists in the conflict. Opposites, are we all listening, exist in the origin story. This is really, really, really important. So you have opposites that exist in the origin story, but you have dichotomy that exists only in the conflict. And the reason why this matters is because you need both. You need a union of opposites to get a union. So for the opposites to occur, you need the union. But in dichotomy, that is not going to be the case. This is really, really important. The dichotomy, you need 100% of pure love. And this is where a lot of people are like, no, you need fear. No, you do not need fear. Fear is Satan. Oh, that's another name. And now I don't agree with the name Satan, because Satan actually is the name of one of the good guys, as we're going to break it down. So the first thing that we have a problem with the conflict is figuring out which side is the good side. Isn't that fun? So this is like what you're dealing with. And you've got a lot of people who are trying to figure out the origin story. And you have a lot of people who are analyzing the conflict, and they're getting the two of them confused. They're really, really confused, which is why everyone is like, what is going on? You also have the pre-Earth story, just to make it extra confusing for us all. So you have the pre-Earth story, you have the origin story, and you have the conflict. So the origin story is what appears in every religion, every myth, everywhere, all the time. It is the origin story. The conflict is the battle between good and evil that we see on constant repeat through all of our history over literally 8,000 years now. So we're going to go ahead and go to really what's going on with the conflict and breaking this down. So according to the conflict, and I'm just going to cover the common denominators with you. The common denominators of the conflict. So this is what's going on with the conflict. The first problem is which side is the love side. The second problem is the tactics of evil. The tactics of evil is really a big problem with that because the tactics of evil compromise ethical understanding so that you end up siding with with your enemy. So the first question you need to ask yourself is, which side are you on? Now, everyone's going to say the good side, except for a handful of assholes. We're going to set that aside. Almost everyone is going to say the good side. So then there's going to be a lot of people debating and arguing over what is the good side. And this is the problem because the tactics of evil is compromising ethical understanding so that you end up siding with your enemy. And that's really what we're all fighting about. That's all we're fighting about. Divide and division is the tactic of the evil. Evil. I'm remembering Eric Idle in that movie with Brendan Fraser. What was it called? I cannot remember. And he's like, I am evil. Do not dare cross this line. And Brendan Fraser crosses his line. And Eric Idle slaps Brandon over the head with a stick. And he goes, what'd you do that for? I'm evil. I can't help it. It's I love that moment. So divide and division, or divide and conquer, is like the number one go-to strategy of war and evil. And it was also the number one go-to strategy of the Roman Empire and narcissism. You see a common denominator here. So we have divide and conquer happening, okay? So that's the first thing, is which side is the love side, the tactics of evil compromise ethical understanding so that you end up siding with your enemy. And now we're all confused with the question, which side, wait, what does good look like? Because we don't even know anymore. Good, what does love or good look like? And that's where we are today. Evil is really doing a good job. So if you go back to my first graph here, one of the things that I mentioned over here is called, fire and knowledge and wisdom. The reason why that is because wisdom is literally the nemesis of evil. Because wisdom allows you to tell the difference between good and evil. And so if you're not ignorant, or I'm sorry, if you're not educated, you are not going to know what is good and evil. So evil loves to use ignorance to keep truth, wisdom, knowledge, and knowing away from people. So they can't tell what is good or evil. You see how that works? So you have this problem with the conflict. Now, the other, so this is the problem with the conflict. Now we're going to show you the history of the conflict. So this is the history of the conflict. Okay. This conflict first came out in a group between Assyria, and Babylon, which were represented by, well, this is where things get kind of weird. Taurus and Leo. The bull and the lion. I can't tell you if the bull is good or if the lion is good. I can't tell you. I don't know. I don't know. I also am in a very, very biased position because I got like 5 Taurus in my sign and I'm a Leo rising. So I have to literally remove myself completely from whether or not the bull or the lion is good or bad because I have a conflict of interest. So that being said, you're going to see the theme of the bull and the lion come up over and over and over again. That goes back to Assyria and Babylon because Assyria represented the lion and Babylon represented the bull. I believe that is what it was. But again, I'm not sure. It may have been both. I don't know. Which is why in the Old Testament, they worshipped a calf. The calf actually went on to be, or the cow or the bull, actually represented Mother Nature. This is inside of Hinduism. It is inside of, it is why, according to Hinduism, the cow is so sacred. It's because the bull, according to their religion, nourished them between the cow feces and fertilizing the land, the milk of the cow producing them with food. So it was considered a great dishonor and sacrilege, blasphemy, to kill a cow because the cow represented the reincarnation of Mother Nature herself. This is, you can Google this shit. This is literally the heavenly cow. The bull from heaven is what it's called, the bull from heaven. This is a very old myth, the bull of heaven. And that is why we have Taurus in the sky as the first astrological sign. Now, Leo, we also see a Leo representing the sun, and we also see the moon. So you're going to see that a lot. Sin, by the way, equals moon. So this is where the very first conflict came out. And the history of the conflict came out between the sun versus the moon. We also see the bull versus the Leo, or the lion. And we see Assyria versus Babylon. Now, this took place literally between 6000 BCE up to 700 BCE is when it ended. So that is the time period for that. Literally 6000 BC to 700 BCE. We are talking a very long conflict. So in the year 700 BCE, 3 people in history came into the world that are really important. The first one is a dude by the name of Cyrus the Great. Cyrus the Great is the one who literally ended the royal bloodline of Babylon. And we can call this battle number 1. Around that same time period, this dude by the name of Zarathustra wrote all of this that I'm showing you right now. This is his work, all of it. He is the one who did the common denominators of the conflict, summarized it all down, realized that there were 3 stories, condensed it all into the Zarathustrian studies. He wrote something called the Gathas, and then he hooked up with Cyrus. Cyrus loved his work, and he spread it all over the place. Cyrus and Zarathustra worked together to deliver this information to Confucius. And this became literally the father. It is the father of all Eastern religion. They created the yin and yang from Zarathustra's work. They then passed it over to India and they wrote the Vedic from this. This is where you end up with Hinduism. This is the father of Hinduism. This became the father religion of literally everything. Everything that you can think of stems from Zarathustra's work. Zarathustra's work literally is the condensed understanding of all that he did in 700 BCE. It came out of Mesopotamia. The man was Persian. And he took it to one more location, Greece, and gave it to Pythagoras. Pythagoras worked with the Zoroastrian. Zoroastrian is the Greek word for Zarathustra. And they took the work of Zoroastrian and they molded it into a little something called philosophy. And this is where philosophy comes from. When you study philosophy the Greek way, you discover the esoteric sciences, and literally it is a beautiful package of all of Zarathustra's work. I'm a philosopher. That's how I found all this shit. So Zarathustra was born around 700 BCE. And there was another man that was born around the same time by the name of Romulus. Yeah, my daughter's over there giggling because she knows how much I hate that fucking man. Romulus. So I'm going to tell you what Romulus did. A lot of people don't know who Romulus is. Romulus had a brother by the name of Remus. Romulus and Remus. These are the two brothers of Rome, as in the founder of Rome, as in Rome, because of Romulus. Romulus killed his brother. I believe that he is the first king. I believe he is the real king. In the story, Cain and Abel, it was based off of Romulus and Remus, Cain and Abel. So Cain. So Romulus kills his brother, and he created something that I call the Roman agenda. Now, this is all going on while Zarathustra is doing his work. So while Zarathustra is building this gorgeous empire of all of this knowledge, Romulus, the Cain, the brother killer, has created the Roman agenda, and he literally staged a citywide rape of the Sabine women. True story, look it up. Then that motherfucker decided to compose something else called the calendar, in which he used to enslave his people. We're all very well acquainted with his work. To this day, we carry our brides over the threshold to symbolize the rape of the Sabine women. You live in a Roman world, get used to it. Your calendar and your marital traditions all stem from Romulus, the brother killer. So Cyrus the Great, by the way, this is still 700 BCE. This is like 732 BCE is when the calendar came into existence. That's when the calendar was written by Romulus. Just to give you an idea, we are talking literally like in the same decade, all this shit went down. So while Zarathustra literally unlocks the God code and the meaning of life, the universe, and everything, and releases it onto the world, that same time period, Cyrus the Great destroys the bloodline, the royal bloodline of Babylon, putting an end to the Assyria and Babylon battle of good and evil. Only they believe in reincarnation, and reincarnation does exist. So that energy did and was transferred over to, oh, I understand now. Oh, I know how to fix this. I know how to win the eschatological war. Oh, I know how to win the eschatological war. Holy shit. You can't kill it. I know dichotomy. So after Cyrus the Great destroyed the royal bloodline of Babylon and put an end to battle number one, that was passed on over to two people, Romulus, and it became Zarathustra versus Romulus. So this is now the second, Zarathustra versus Romulus. Now, Zarathustra went on to the ancient Greek culture, and Romulus went on to the Roman culture. And that would be battle number two. Romulus figured all of this shit out. His people figured it all out. And with the Roman agenda, they decided to wipe out the Greek culture, which they did. Oh, but they didn't. You see, part of the Greek culture, this is really the funny part. So I'm gonna show you this. So this is what everything, this is everything. All right. Now this battle royale. Okay, so this is the battle royale. All right. This took place between the years 700 BCE and then King Darius, the liar. Okay, which some people call the Great. I don't think he's great. He's a fucking liar. Changed the history books. He was born in 500 BCE, and Darius wrote the history books so that he was born before Cyrus the Great. Yeah. And he also wrote that he inherited Babylon and became the rightful king of Babylon. So there's a whole lot of really wishy-washy, dirty shit that took place between King Darius and the Roman Empire. Real dirty shit that took place there. And while all of this went down, this is another little part of the story. In the year 1000 BCE, this is how the Babylon Empire came into ending. There was a king by the name of Nabu, and I cannot remember his actual name. Let me look up his name here for a moment, because again, really important that I get this accurate. And you can look up all of this stuff. This is easy peasy to look up. It's this is 100% fact. It's all archaeologically proven. I'm just connecting dots for people. His real name, what is his name? Come on. Nabu, oh, let me see here. Ah, there we are. His name was Nabu Kuduri. One of these days I'm going to remember this. Kuduri Usur. There you go. That is his name. Okay. Nabu Kuduri Usur. That is his name. Okay. He captured a little something called, well, it was a bull statue. And that bull statue he called Marduk, and he wrote something called the Marduk prophecy. The thing is, he wrote the Marduk prophecy at the time that he took the statue, and according to the Marduk prophecy, whoever has the statue is rightfully the king of Babylon. Now, fun fact about Babylon and their religions, they believed that if you worshipped a statue, the statue became the actual god. And this is the first and only mention of Marduk. Well, not the only, but it's the first mention of Marduk in all of history. It was 1000 BCE with this statue coming home by Nabu Kuduri Asur. It looks like Nabu literally created and invented Marduk, because prior to this moment, there's nothing in history. It's nothing. So prior to this particular moment, suddenly there's this name called Marduk, an invention by Nabu Kuduri Asur about, oh, well, whoever has this is immediately captain of the team. And so he made himself captain of the team with this bullshit that he invented to claim that he has. Well, King Darius, the liar, did the exact same thing. So that after he had this statue for 1,000 years, I'm going to call it the curse of the statue. Like literally, it's a curse, really. The curse of the statue. Really, that when you look at how the story plays out in the history books, it looks more like a curse. And this statue is actually told by King Darius in the book of Daniel, which is completely fiction, as all archaeologists will tell you. The Bible book of Daniel is bullshit, because that is where King Darius claims that he lived 200 years prior to Cyrus. He's such a moron. So King Darius literally wrote himself to exist before Cyrus the Great and completely ignored the fact that he existed 200 years after Cyrus the Great. So that's like really a major inconsistency in the Bible, is the birth dates of everybody. And basically, Nabu did steal this statue. He had it carried to his palace, and then it stayed there for about 300 years. And 300 years later, all of Babylonia was destroyed. So this is like 300 years later. Yeah, this is really where I'm looking at it going, this looks like a curse. It looks like the statue was cursed. The curse of the bull statue. Now, I want to call this love, because we're back to Assyria, and you don't fuck around with that shit. So 300 years later, Babylon ends. There is no king. And there is no king for about 200 years. There's no Babylon. Babylon does not exist for 200 years because Babylon went under Assyria rule when Cyrus the Great ruled for 200 years. King Darius comes along after Cyrus is dead. And he's like, oh yeah, that's right. I'm king of Babylon. Because look, this Bible exists and it shows that I, got this inherited from Cyrus the Great, who I then passed. Literally, this is how he rewrote it. And it's when you look at what really happened according to history, archaeology, science, and all the evidence versus what King Darius wrote in the Bible, it's bullshit. And while you're doing this, you really want to look up a little man by the name of, oh, what is your name, you beautiful man? Gautama. Gamata. Gamata. Ah, yes. Gamata, by the way, means mother cow. Fun fact. As in Mother Nature. And a Gamata. Also, this is the best part. Gamata was a Zoroastrian. And his name, I believe, was Semis. I can't remember if that was his name or not. It's in my history when I wrote it all down. And Semis was killed by King Darius. Gamata was the son of Cyrus. So this is all the shit that went down. So you can see how all the corruption occurred around this time period. So this is the history of the conflict. So this is how it all passed hands and all the details of when it went down. So now you've got this little battle royale happening between, I'm going to go ahead. No, it was Ceramus, I think it was. I'm trying to remember his name. Let me see here. Ah, yes, right here is where I want to write it. Put it right there. Okay. So now I want to put this over here with Darius. Oh, yeah, that was right. So this, I know what I want to do. I can see where I messed up. I want to make sure this is chronologically in the right order. So there we go. All right, so there we are. Okay. All right. So there's this Zarathustra versus Romulus battle royale. So basically, this is what brings us to the year 500 BCE with King Darius. That's where that is. And it was about 150 years later that we see the trial of Socrates. And then 60 years later, we see Alexander the Great, which is really fishy, but all right. And I'm just going to go ahead and just jump here. So this is the conflict again. So still the conflict. So what's going on now following Darius? So now we have post-Darius bullshit. And this is like between 500 BCE to the 400 BCE. I'm sorry, 400 CE. So that's where we are now. We are now at this point in history where we are looking at 500 BC from Darius up to the Council of Nicaea. All right, so here's what's going on. So you have Zarathustra and the battle royale. But they passed this down into ancient Greek and the Roman culture. So you had the ancient Greek and you had Rome. Now, in addition to that, we also had Persia. And Persia had the Magi, which is basically a philosopher. The ancient Greeks had the philosophers. Now, Zarathustra was still spreading this stuff. And he also took it over to Ireland, where they had the Druids. Isn't this awesome, guys? This is where it gets really amazing. So, and we're not done yet. In the Eastern world, we also had Confucius. So this is literally everything that Zarathustra did. It literally was the science of wisdom and knowledge. Okay. And he literally, with the help of Cyrus, spread it all over the world. But Romulus had the Roman agenda. The Roman agenda is literally referred to as Rome eternal. And the Latin for that is literally empirical. Eternal power is what it is called. Which is why it's called the Roman Empire. Eternal power. Now, it was very common during that time period to ask the question or to use druids and magi and philosophers for the, what are they called? For prophecy. That was normal. That's all over the Bible. You can see that all over the place where they're all like, tell me the future. Kings, Caesars, everyone. We're constantly calling on druids, Persians, magi, magi, philosophers, and druids to predict the future. Now, this is called the universal clock. The universal clock, you have the esoteric point of view, which means insider. And then you have the exoteric point of view. This is really, really important that you guys know this, exoteric point of view. And this is the outsider point of view. So according to the esoterics, the universal clock is literally, you read it, you just read. But according to the esoterics, it's magic. As in relating, or it means of the magi. And they can predict, which is called divination or divine, which means of God. Which literally means to predict. So this is how the esoterics viewed the universal clock. And the esoterics were the philosophers, the magi, and the druids. The philosophers, the magi, and the druids. We're really bored with it. They view it as, we just read it, but okay. And that's the universal clock. So this is where it's going to get really fucking awesome. Okay, guys? This is where it gets really amazing. There are a few examples of the universal clock in existence. One of them is called the Akashic Records. And the other one is called the Mayan calendar. Because the Mayan calendar, the Mayans figured all of this out. Because they got it. They got it. And the Mayans, and this is why I love the Mayans so much, because Maya had no Roman influence. So they got to just be. Like they just were. It's beautiful. And the universal clock is a mathematical pattern on a 2,000-year rotation. Before it just keeps repeating, because it's a cycle. It's the life cycle. And it lasts 2,000 years, which is why the Mayan calendar ends after 2,000 years, is because it repeats itself. Rotation. So there you go. Okay? So this is the universal clock. So philosophers know how to read this thing, and the exoterics don't. So the exoterics can tap into it a little bit, and that's what astrology does. That is what the zodiac does, and that is what tarot cards do. They are tapping into it. The energy of the universal clock. That's what you guys are doing. You guys are tapping into the energy of the universal clock. So there you go. That's the difference. That's the universal clock. The esoteric point of view, we don't divine, we're not predicting anything, we're just reading, because it's a book. It's literally like, well, it's a map. It's a map. It's a map. It's a big one. It's a really big one. So the Romans, who were exoteric, went to the philosophers and said, is Rome going to live forever? And they said, no, it's not. It's going to collapse after 2,000 years. And the philosophers know this. They knew this because it's inside the universal clock. So Rome created the Roman agenda, and the universal clock talks about the Roman agenda. So the philosophers knew this. They're like, oh, this is the part. So how was your day-to-day, Socrates? Oh, great. Caesar showed up and he wanted to know about the Roman Empire and if it was going to last. Ah, so we're at that part of the story. Yeah. Yeah, we're at that part of the story. It happened. Yeah, I knew it was going to happen because I read the universal clock. And you know what to do. Yeah, it's all in the clock. Okay. So that's how it went down for the philosophers. We knew this. We saw it. We could read it. It's in the book. So we had the plan is in the book because it's in the book. So we just followed the plan. We knew they were going to do it. So we did it. We buried it. We did it. And they went, all right, it's that time of the year. Yeah, I see the stars. We got to go find this guy named Jesus and give him all of the, yeah, I know. So they sent 3 magi out to arrive at a very particular point to make sure that some guy by the name of Jesus received this data at the right appropriate place and time to get the data, which he got. And they sat down with Mary and said, look, Mary, this is something called the universal clock. And according to the universal clock, your son goes off to be really amazing, and he's a huge part of the story. So you need to make sure that you raise this boy in a way that he will be able to be studied by our professors and philosophers at the college and the universities, and this is how you need to do it. And here we give you gold, frankincense, and myrrh. Thank you for your time. So Mary does exactly what she's supposed to do. She raises Christ exactly the way she is instructed. And this is so fucking cool. And when he is 12 years old, right on time, according to the philosophers, because at 12 years old, that is when it happens, she took him to the university and he found the philosophers just as they said. And they were like, oh, look, it's the boy, according to the universal clock. Yeah, we saw this coming. Yeah, he needs to come. And Mary knew about it. She's like, yeah, okay, yeah, all right. So he went to study with the philosophers. And Christ is sitting here studying the universal clock, and he went, oh. And we're like, yeah, you got a job to do, which is why the Garden of Gethsemane happened, because he knew his job. So he was a really, really intricate part of the universal clock. He did his thing. It did his thing. It passed down. And around the year 1500, this dude by the name of Da Vinci figured it out. He was the last person to read the clock. Well, he was the first person in like a long time to read the clock. I skipped a lot here just now, so I'm going to go back just a little bit and recap. So according to the universal clock, the Roman Empire develops the Roman agenda and becomes obsessed with making sure that this data is wiped out, but they have no idea about the universal clock because they can't read it. So by the 4th century, it's gone. All of the educational system is gone, which we knew. So while things took place the way they did, St. Patrick could read the clock, which is why he volunteered to go to Ireland to preserve it with the Druids so they would keep it alive, because they could read the clock. And they did. They passed it down for 1,600 years and they were successful. And it was around that time, somewhere between the 15 and 1600s, before the Holy Roman Empire figured out that St. Patrick didn't do what St. Patrick was supposed to do, that the Druids were able to pass down. I don't know how Da Vinci got his information. I have no idea how he figured it out. But either way, Da Vinci was able to study so much that he found the universal clock. And when he found it, he went, oh, and he knew what to do. And the universal clock has a series of messages inside of it. And these are the messages. Message number 1 is, this is the Roma agenda. Look at what they did. That's the first thing you see. The second thing is, here is everything that will happen ever in all of time and again. And the next thing is, these are, wait, hold on, let me see here. Hold on a minute. There are not 10 commandments. There were 12. Find the other 2. And then the last message was this. get this to the 21st century. 2027 CE. So it's literally Rome's dirt, the universal clock with everything that's happened. And there are 10 commandments. There were 12 ethics. Find the other 2 and get this to the 21st century. So then Da Vinci did his artwork and he embedded it. So did Cervantes, so did Shakespeare, and so did every great book from literally the 1500s all the way up. And it got passed down through all of literature up to now. So Zarathustra's work is back. And now it's the standoff between Zarathustra and Romulus, which is in the universal clock. Now, where all of this really goes wrong or has gone wrong in the past, and where we're going to get this one right, is, do you remember that little thing I said in the very beginning where we're talking about it being a dichotomy versus the opposite? And this is it right here. You cannot destroy it. It's not an opposite. The only way to overcome this is, why do I have it? I don't want this little guy here suddenly. He just popped up. The only way to get through this is the dichotomy. So you need to know what a dichotomy is. A dichotomy is a less or more, meaning if you have 100% of love, then you have 0% of fear. And if you have 60% of love, then you have 40% of fear. This is not an opposite. This is a dichotomy. This is the moon, people. The moon. The moon is a dichotomy. That's actually where the first concept of dichotomy was was discovered, was through the moon. And if you have 20% of love, then you have 80% of fear. So the goal is to get yourself at 100% of love and 0% of fear. If you do not do this, why is this not working? Why? If you do not do this, you have to tip the scale. You have to tip the scale. That's what you have to do. You cannot destroy it because it cannot be created or destroyed. You have to transfer it because energy doesn't work that way. You have to transfer, not destroy, which is why it did not work. This is it right here. This is how to solve this. Is because when you have something like this, you cannot destroy it. Energy cannot be created or destroyed, which is why it passed from Babylon over into Romulus, and it's here now. So it's, yeah, that's what we're doing. You have to transfer all of the fear over into love, and that is what we call it transferring of trauma, and that is how it's done. So now we're going to go back here. So there's the conflict, and there's the origin story. And then you have the common denominators of the conflict, you have the history of the conflict, and you have the solution of the conflict. So that is what is going on. Once you understand that you're dealing with these 3 stories, it really, really calms a lot down. It settles a lot down. Zarathustra wrote about, in the Gathas, he wrote about the eschatology. I want to call it's called Faroki. I want to call it's called I think it's called the Faroki. I cannot remember. It's a Persian word, and I can never ever remember it. But he actually has, it's a beautiful little, literally, it's like 7 lines long, and it's the entire battle of good and evil as he read it from the universal clock. This is how it's going to go down. And it's a clean, very, very beautiful explanation of it. I can't remember it right now, but it's in my courses. I need to keep it on hand because I'm constantly looking for it. But this is it right here. You have the origin story, you have the conflict, you have the pre-Earth story. And a lot of people are focused on the pre-Earth story, and that's the problem. And they think the pre-Earth story is tied into the conflict. And here's the thing. It is, but the thing is, this is the Earth trial. That's what's going on. This is the Earth trial. That is exactly what this is. And the Earth's trial is the origin story and the conflict. And you have to be able to pass the conflict. And you're going to have to do it, every one of us. It's literally an individual test, and it is a relationship test. I'm going to call it trial because that sounds more awesome. So you have an individual trial, there's going to be the relationship trial, and then there's going to be the societal trial in 3 parts. Mother Nature loves her 3s. She is obsessed with them. So you have the individual trial. This is going to be your healing journey. You have the relationship trial. That is referred to as the twin flame journey. And then you have the societal trial. We're all familiar with this one. The societal trial is, well, yeah, we're in it. We're in it. Yeah. And that is the eschatological. That is the ultimate battle royale. That's what it all comes down to. So this is really what this comes down to right here, is you have the Earth trial, the individual journey, you have your relationship trial, and then you have the societal trial. And it's very much we're going to do this together, and we're also going to do this apart. And we all have our places. So if you are aware of this, you're right where you need to be. You need to be focusing on your healing journey, your twin flame journey, your relationship trial, and your battle royale. And yeah, that's it. So I have completed the healing journey. I am almost done with the twin flame journey. And now I am focusing the majority. I am always focusing the majority of my energy into the societal trial, which is what this is. This is what the healing garden all is about. And once the conflict is done, I've got a laundry list of stuff I've got to focus on. We all have our missions. We all have what we are supposed to be doing. And yeah, this is pretty much it. Origin story, conflict, and the pre-Earth story. I don't like to talk about the pre-Earth story very much because, well, that's in the universal world clock. I don't like to talk about it. I will be talking about it, but I'm very, very careful with what I say because, it's in the universal clock. Yeah, there's that's something you should not be concerning yourself with at this time. It's irrelevant and it's not the point. And if you're focused on the pre-Earth story, you are not focused on the conflict. You are not focusing on the healing journey, the twin flame journey, or the battle royale. The pre-Earth story has absolutely nothing to do with your healing journey, the twin flame journey, or the battle royale. So if you are focusing on the pre-Earth journey, then you are not doing your job. And that is something that a lot of people really need to get through their heads, because this is a problem. Because the more you focus on the pre-Earth story, the less you're actually contributing towards battle royale, because you're not doing your healing journey. In fact, the people who have done their healing journey gain access to the pre-Earth story. And the pre-Earth story is what you get as a reward to your healing journey, which means if you don't know what's going on with your pre-Earth story, it's because you're not working on your healing journey. And if you've stopped your healing journey to focus on your pre-Earth story, Mother Nature has a lot to say about that, and it's also in the universal clock. So, if you want to know how to read the universal clock, that is part of the healing journey, actually. In order to do that, you have to study philology, logic, math, calculus, trigonometry, then astronomy, then Plato's astrology, and then ontology. And then you'll be able to study and learn and actually read the universal clock. I have that also outlined in my courses if you want to do that. And that does align with the healing journey and the twin flame journey. So you can take up studies to learn the universal clock and be in compliance with your journey, the twin flame journey, and the battle royale. And that will also give you access to the pre-Earth story, we had a little something we refer to as in the right perspective for you. The right perspective for you is a phrase that means you are not allowed to have certain information until you are in the right perspective to receive it. And the only way to get yourself into the correct perspective to see something like that is to actually do the academic disciplines and the work and your healing journey to obtain it. So there's no shortcuts. There's no cheating allowed. There's no way around it. Let me just see here. I'm trying to like maximize my video. Okay, there it is. All right. So that's everything I have to say about that. That is I said a lot more about it, but this is a solid summation of the 3 stories and understanding the difference between the origin story and also the origin story and also the, what are you called? You're called something. The conflict. There's a lot of people also who are spending a lot of time digging in a lot of the written material around the 1st century BCE. There's like, yeah, the 1st century BCE, thinking that there's going to be data revealed about the pre-Earth story. I don't think I'm going to have anything to say about that right now. That's going to go over to the pre-Earth story side. So thank you so much, and may the kindest of words always find you.